or taking the Valium. Right, okay. I thought that was funny, but anyway. Okay, so it's just a heterosexual world's the only one that exists. Okay, so if you're walking around like this, you know, who knows you? I mean, like, hey, I want to be, you're close to you. I'm really available. I really, you know, you can trust me. You know, this kind of being, this is how we walk around, though, very burdened and very covered and very protected. But is this the way to live?
Heavy.
It's heavy. And when people ask you then in your life, what is it that you want? What is it that brings you joy? You know, what would you choose? What kind of mate do you want to be with? What kind of vocation? What's your livelihood? You know, how much money feels good for you? You know, what is it, how do you let things in when you've got all this going on? So we just are willing to come in conscious community like this and start telling a new story, all right? And a story, many of these that we learn here in Unity is that God is love, and that God is within me, that God's the life force that is operating in all life things, and I am part of that. I am absolutely not separate from that, all right? Anything else you learn in Unity, or you learn in this world of...
God is not gender.
God is not gender. That's handy. That's a good thing. You know, really. I mean, I know. I'm glad because, you know, I've been kind of shifting over to the female side. So God is no gender. All right, that's great. So then you can show up without the wine and you're cool. Right. Okay.
You are your label.
Okay, so you're not your label.
Not exactly.
Okay, great.
Really not.
Right, because we know that sometimes if you think you're a particular job, sometimes that job ends.
Yeah.
Right? And then what happens? Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're more than our profession, of course, because then you can, you know, have another profession if you need. All right. Anything else you learn here?
God needs help and doesn't know everything.
Right. Well, and that you are that. Right. Yeah.
We
So
need to be.
we need each other.
A role in. We need to play a role in finding the answers.
Okay. All right. So we're participating in the awakening, like you all in visualizing your new church. You know, I'm participating in life happening. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
I have an expression of God is, there is nothing else.
An expression of God is, and there's nothing else. That's exactly right. It's kind of like being in the breath. Yeah, because that's happening. So, then we get to be. We get to be free. I know Dana said he did this exercise, and then he's just started to think, I don't know. That was the other service. That's right. He's a little more revealed than I am. But anyway, so we get to see that this is where we want to start noticing when we're saying we want to change our eyesight, when we want to improve our eyesight, we've got to look at the ways that we learn things. This is not beating ourselves up. It is not making anybody wrong. It's just that when we look at what was going on when we were growing up. I know I grew up in a neighborhood. Everybody kind of looked the same. You know, we were watching Leave It to Beaver. There was just, you know, that's all I knew. So to get out in the world of spiritual diversity and diversity in general was so exciting for me, but it also was very scary to see how small my eye was. And so we want to be able to improve our eyesight by getting out in the world and seeing and getting out of the lie and getting into the eye. Okay, now, our blind spots. Blind spots are tricky to see because they're blind spots. And you know when you've got them in your car, it's really dangerous, right, to not be able to see. But it also allows people to live in that kind of place of, oh, life doesn't really work for me. You know, and to watch that when we're saying, I want something to happen, and then, oh, but it never works for me. That's just my luck. You know, money's difficult, the economy's difficult, men are blank, women are blank, you know how we do. Right, so it was 3 guys, just the example. Now these may be people more that you know rather than you. You know those negative people that you can be around. Yeah, you know, I've got a few of them in my life, not me at all. But anyway, so there's 3 guys that were traveling together, 3 salesmen. And 2 of them were in this idea of eyesight and looking more about, you know, what are the opportunities in life. And one of them was that guy that had a lot of blind spots. So their car breaks down, and they're salesmen, and their car breaks down, and they realize they're probably going to miss their flight out of town. And so they see a farmhouse, and they go to the farmhouse, and they were saying, is there a mechanic or something for our car? And the woman says, you know, the mechanic's already gone, it's later in the day, but you're welcome to stay here. And I have room for 2 of you in the house, and one of you, there's a place in the barn you can sleep. So, of course, the negative guy, like, oh, yeah, right, I'm not sleeping in that barn. So they were like, great. So that guy and another guy went inside, and this other one goes out, sleeps in the barn. And a little bit later, you hear, and this guy says, you know, I'm Jewish, there's pigs in the barn, and I just can't be out there in the barn. So he comes back in. And so then the other guy goes out there, not the negative one, and he's out in the barn, and pretty soon you hear, and this guy says, you know, I am an Indian man, and there's cows out there, and cows are sacred for me, and I can't sleep in the barn. And so here's this negative, you know, I told you I'd end up in the barn. So he goes out to the barn, a little bit later, it's the cow and the pig. So, as we see, when we're living our blind spots, nobody wants to be around us. You know, because it's really exhausting for people to not live in their eye. So you know that your blind spots will be when people keep leaving you, even the cows and the pigs. You know, when people are saying, you know, it's just really heavy to be around you. And it's hard to see those things. I often call those eye masks. And you know, when you take off an eye mask, there's a lot of light that comes in. So we're being willing to have to look at the things that we didn't want to look at, you know, with our blind spots. So finally, when we're living with our eyes open, is a place where we're willing to take risks. We're willing to do that thing that we haven't done before. And if I have had, and the main joy I've had in ministry is the times of being able to invite people into a greater sense of who they are, you know, through conversations. I do more classes than I do anything else. And this invitation to know that you're the one that forgot who you are. You know, and that's all there ever is to it. And so we have to walk through usually a lot of fear and stories because we put on these cloaks and these hats and these glasses. We're really attached to them. We're really attached to them. So to really trust that people are trustworthy, that, you know, I can change jobs, I can change my body, I can change my food, I can really trust life more, I can have a better relationship with money. Takes a lot of being willing to be naked, to feel vulnerable, to take risks, but it works. And it just one story, I started to think of all the many that came through when I was willing to get naked. I love to travel. Maybe 5 planets in Sagittarius, I don't know, but I've always loved to travel. And you know, as a flight attendant, it was like, you know, when's the next plane leaving? I just love that stuff. But I was over in Italy, and I was on a Eurail pass, and I was just traveling around, and it was one of my first trips to Italy, and I just love Italy. I mean, the food and the architecture, you know, Italian men, what are you going to do, you know. So anyway, I was having dinner with a friend, a family friend that owned a business there, and we were sitting out on the Mediterranean eating, and I was just crying, you know, because the food was so good. And, you know, I grew up on pot pies in Texas, you know, so I was just, oh my gosh, and I was like, this is so wonderful. And I'm talking to this man, and I said, I'd love to live here. And he looks at me and he says, we have a job for you. You could teach English, you could come over, you could be part of our marketing department. In fact, we have a little apartment right on the little Riviera. We have a car. And I'm going, you know, I still got all these tears. I'm like, what? And this was I had no intention of, I didn't know anything about anything, but in my nakedness, in my place of eyesight, I was able to say, I'd love to live here. See, that was my only job, was to be in tune enough with myself, and it was through tears and through sort of being, you know, overwhelmed with joy. Oh, what a problem, right? Being overwhelmed with joy, that I was able just to blurt this thing out, and it was there for me. It's like when you're talking about this new spiritual home that you want. It's there. We just have to have enough fun with the thought of it to allow our hearts to open, to allow our eyes to open, to allow our inner eye to open. It's a pretty great way to live. You know, it's a pretty great way to live. And then as we know, with this thing, then we don't just have sight, we have vision. So I wonder if we can close up our time together with saying again, I, blank, am committed to seeing my life clearly. I am the light of the world. All right? Okay, so here we go. I, Heidi, am committed to seeing my life clearly. I am the light of the world. And yes, you are. I almost need sunglasses here. And I will tell you that here is the eye exam that will be taken later at 12:30, and I'd love to see more of you as you see more of you. Namaste.